All right. Hello. Hello. How are you? Have you been all right? Hey. Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to another episode of the EWWP podcast. For those of you who are new and just tuning in, my name is Dana. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. Wonderful to have you. Always wonderful to have you. How have you guys been doing? How was your weekend? How was last week? Did you do something fun? Did you, do something nice for yourself? I hope you did. My week wasn't too bad. Nothing to really report or complain about. Just some amusing things going on at work that thankfully I don't have an active participation in. So I just watch from the sidelines and I find it amusing. Right now I'm drinking some orange spice tea. It's from a shop down in Maryland. And yeah, I forget the name of the shop, but it's pretty good. So yeah, what am I talking to you about today? Well, it's been a minute since I've talked about a rune. Yes, we're continuing on with our rune series, and this time I'm talking about the rune Mannaz. So for those of you who are able to watch this, it looks like this. This is Mannaz. It looks like an hourglass turned over on its side with some sand pouring down it. So kind of like an M with triangles. It's weird. I listen, you don't come here to hear me describe things because I'm not very good at it. But yeah, we're talking about Mannaz. It is the 4th rune in Tier's aett, so that's the final aett, and it is the 20th rune overall in the entire rune set. Some associations for this rune. The colors are dark red and blue. The tree is holly, and the plants are mandrake, foxglove, and honeysuckle, which I find interesting because mandrake and foxglove are toxic. So, and I don't think honeysuckle is. Don't quote me on that though. Also, as well as those plants, common madder and pimpernel are also often associated with this rune. As far as stones, crystals, minerals that correlate to the energy and theme of Mannaz, amethyst and garnet. Those are the two that I saw, pretty much just those two. The element I've seen is air, but I've also seen water, but that was like from one source, so I'm not really sure how well that goes. Personally, I go with air, but that's just me. As far as the alphabet, Mannaz is M, of course. Well, I say of course like it's obvious, like obviously it's M, but it's not. I guess for someone who doesn't really know runes, it's not that obvious. But so it's M as far as the alphabet. For the body, for the physical body, the whole body. There's no one specific part that is more tied to than the other. It's the whole body, and we'll get into that it'll make sense the more I talk about it, okay? Why the whole body is the association as far as a physical human body, okay? And the fragrances are sage and nutmeg, which is interesting because they're not associated like plants in that way, but just like the fragrance and the scent. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. In tarot, Mannaz corresponds with the energy of the magician, the Hierophant, and the Wheel of Fortune. And in some decks, that's referred to as the Wheel of Destiny. So yeah. The animal association is the goshawk. So yeah. Celestial bodies are the sun, specifically the sun in Aquarius, the moon, specifically the moon in the 4th house, which that doesn't, for those who don't know anything or hardly anything about astrology, I know that doesn't make sense. Just go with it. Further down the line, as I go over things, not in this episode, but in the podcast, it will, I promise. And Jupiter. The deities are Mimir, Heimdall, and Odin. Okay? So, let's talk about Tier's Et a little bit. So, Tier's Et, which is the 3rd and final one, focuses primarily on spirituality and our best, brightest self. Mannaz represents humankind, man, the human condition, and perhaps the most importantly, the self, both the individual and the community. So this is very much it's a rune of the self, not just the individual person, but the community and even the species as a whole, okay? Which, when we look at it, Mannaz does have man in the name. It's also a link to higher power, one we all have, one that we can connect with and open through our inner eye. So it's through knowing ourselves and being in tune with ourselves that we connect and establish contact with the higher power, okay? In a way, we're simultaneously alone and not. So each of us is an individual person in our own body, separate from others physically, but also part of a community physically as a whole, as a species as well, and the collective consciousness as well. So there is that. To help with a mental image of what this rune looks like, it looks like a sharp, pointy infinity sign that's dripping and forming an N shape. It was often said or described in my resources that this rune is supposed to represent or resemble two people standing face to face, okay? So kind of like having a conversation, but their noses are like right against each other and they're just standing like that. I hope that's probably a better actual description than what I've been saying this whole time. But yeah. So or better yet, like two pointy P's, but one of the P's is like reversed. So look, use Google. Use Google to look this up, okay? So people live all around the globe, okay? Our species is everywhere, in different cultures and colors, with different religious beliefs, religions, morals, but we are all human, and we are all tied together by that way. Connecting us in a way that is undeniable and unbreakable. Even if some of us wish that we weren't, or want to disavow that, whether we like it or not, we are all part of the same species. And that is something that we can't, even if we want to, that's something that we can't break away from or distance ourselves from. Going down to the smaller picture, so that was the big picture, like us being part of the same species, the same community. Going down to the small picture, Mannaz is the rune of self. In that taking care of and looking after yourself and your needs benefits the greater community. Not just yourself, because you want to be in good health, you want to be in good standing, mainly for yourself, but by doing that, that also benefits your community and the people and the support system around you. In the past, when our species was still young and evolving and getting their bearings, not yet established in the way that we are now, being in optimal health meant more hands to protect from predators and to forage or hunt for sustenance. When we went from nomads to stationary populations, everyone had to work, to build, to hunt, to farm, all this stuff to prosper, make sure that we're all fed, make sure that everything is going smoothly, even sometimes help raising the children. If you've ever heard the adage, it takes a community to raise a child. Some in a lot of communities in the past, even in certain communities nowadays, that is still very much a literal truth. Tea. Being sick or not treating injuries would put the entire community at risk, of course. So it was crucial back then to care for yourself. And while we may not have as many predators as we do now that are hunting a good portion of us and causing significant damage to our species as a whole, it's still important for us to look after ourselves. And just not for our own benefit, but for those around us as well. How often have you heard about someone at work or school being sick and you're like, oh, stay away from me, I don't want that. So taking care of yourself and treating yourself benefits everyone around you from getting sick or hurt or putting them in some sort of danger or unsavory circumstance, okay? So, in a reading, Mannaz can indicate that self-care and self-awareness are needed. It could also suggest that you need to pause and see how you are doing physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Perhaps there are needs that you've been pushing off to the side and neglecting. Maybe you've been putting your community and other people before yourself, and that's been causing whatever issues that you are experiencing. So don't be careless of yourself and of others. Mannaz also reminds us that we have family, community, and support around us, even in our aloneness. Again, going back to we are simultaneously alone and not. Even when we are alone, we are not truly alone. Even when we feel lost, when we feel like no one gets us, when we feel that deep despair, like we are drowning in some sort of crisis or emotion, and we feel like we are alone, we actually aren't. Physically, we aren't, of course, but that's also emotionally and mentally. Tea. Reach out for help. So perhaps you are in that state where you feel alone and you pull Mannaz. It could be telling you, hey, reach out for help. Even if you don't think it's necessary or that you need it, or maybe you feel like you don't even want it, still reach out. On the flip side, it could also indicate that you need to offer your help or your support to someone who is struggling. Take care of your community around you, of your support around you. And it's this kind of, again, I feel like with Mannaz, with it being that pointy infinity sign, that's not an accident. I feel like it's kind of a full circle thing. By taking care of yourself, you take care of your community. And by taking care of your community, you take care of yourself. It's a never-ending loop, a never-ending circle. On the other hand, Mannaz could indicate perhaps there are friendships, acquaintanceships, relationships that you need to stop and reevaluate. Do those relationships still resonate with you, with how you feel, with who you are now? Or are they more of a detriment to your own health in whatever way? Is the love and care that you give returned in a good equal amount, or is it taken more for granted and being taken advantage of? So let's break it down to 3 other different specific reading genres. When showing up in a specific reading on love, for example, Mannaz indicates usually that both partners are in tune with each other, that good communication will make the joint effort and the working together as a partnership stronger and solid. If issues do arise, look at them from a different angle, take a more logical, intellectual approach, and think outside the box. Maybe you're too close and too emotional, and more rational, logical thinking is needed instead of that heart on your sleeve thinking. Any other runes drawn alongside Mannaz in a love reading could hint at people outside of the relationship impacting it, whether negatively or positively, depending on those other runes. In a money or finance reading, Mannaz indicates that any anxiety or stress that you feel about finances or money is actually self-imposed. So, again, take that outsider perspective. Look at it from outside to help quell those stresses and anxieties. Invest wisely and seek professional aid or education on finances and money. And plan and strategize, as sheer force of will won't be enough to reach your goals, whatever you may be trying to obtain or get to. It's strategic planning is needed more than just that go-getter attitude. And lastly, for school or career, Mannaz is asking in a reading to take a step back and consider why. Why is your boss making these decisions? Why is the company handling these situations the way that they are? Why is the workplace making all of these choices that seem counterintuitive to the overall good? Perhaps what you need is to step into a different mindset. It's not as personal as you feel like it is. Maybe there's a hidden element or something that you haven't considered because you're so emotionally close and invested in it. Don't make any sudden changes or decisions at this time, and just keep on doing what you're doing. Consider how a stranger would view your work situation. Maybe what is needed is an attitude adjustment instead of and there being an actual issue with the boss, with the company, with the workplace. Maybe the issue is your attitude. Fix yourself. You know? And the last thing that I have is on how Mannaz can be interpreted when it's reversed, because this is a rune that in a reading it can show up reversed. So when it does, it's indicating that you're out of tune or feeling blocked with yourself, out of balance, off kilter. You're going to want to quietly look inward for the clarity that you need to realign yourself once more. It's possible that you've been relying too heavily on yourself when teamwork and outside help is what a situation needs now more than ever. Not just that, but maybe you need to, like I've been saying, take that step back, look at it from a more logical and intellectual point of view. Be more analytical instead of emotional. Maybe a situation or how you're feeling isn't so much there's something like mentally wrong with me, emotionally wrong with me. Maybe it's more of a different perspective, you know? Maybe the reason why you're feeling so yucky is because your physical body is sick, not because your mental or emotional well-being is disturbed. If that makes sense. I hope that does. Of course, a reverse Mannaz can also indicate that you've let your health fall to the wayside. Instead of making sure you're in good health, all of your energy and effort have been focused on other people and your community around you. So you're going to want to put that focus back on yourself. And that goes back to the taking care of yourself also takes care of your community. It's a simultaneous mutual beneficial relationship. As you take care of yourself and culture and nurture yourself, so too are you cultivating, nurturing, and taking care of your community. All right. And lastly, a reverse Mannaz may be telling you that you are leaning too heavily or too much on other people. Perhaps you've been taking advantage of your support system, of a certain relationship, of family, or what have you. Perhaps you have been relying too much on the strength and the capability of other people. A reverse Mannaz, and this depends on the situation that you're pulling for, as with tarot, but Mannaz could indicate that you have the strength, the cunning, the prowess to handle whatever issue, situation, challenge, obstacle you are facing. Okay? So don't take your community and your support system for granted. Don't use up resources, especially finite resources, when they're not needed. Some journeys, after all, are journeys that can't be done with a team or a group. There are only some journeys that we have to do ourselves, whether we like it or not. As much as we want to have that other person or that group of people with us, we have to do it alone. Okay? And sometimes it is physically not able. It is physically impossible for other people to help us, whether we are physically away from them or what have you. All right? And that is all I have for you on Mannaz. It's a pretty, in a way, it's a pretty straightforward rune. It's genuinely a rune of the self. It is the self. The self as us as individuals, the self as us as a species. It covers all of that. And I really like that. And this is a bit of a short one, isn't it? We haven't done a really short one in a while, I think. I'm not quite sure. But, yeah. So, I hope that you guys enjoyed that. I had a great time researching Mannaz. Always enjoyed doing the runes. Always. But yeah, that's all I got for you. So, if you guys could do me a little favor, if you could follow and share this podcast around, that would be great. If you are able to financially donate, I do have a Patreon and I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, both under Every Which Way Podcast, so look there. I am also slowly getting more active on social media under the username Witch of the Gathering. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and I even have a Blue Sky account now. So yeah, I'm trying to step away from Facebook. I don't really like Facebook. And I'm trying to step away from that and use it a lot less and be a lot less invested in it. So yeah. But as always, if all that you can do is listen and share, thank you. It's much appreciated. I hope that you all have a marvelously magical Monday. And my friends, I will see you in the next one. Alrighty, dighty dippity doo. Okay. Bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Bye. Bye. I've been listening to the Broadway cast recording of Beetlejuice, and it's amazing.